The lobby of the Harrington Grand smelled like money and fresh flowers, and Dr. Evelyn Carter had walked through 100 lobbies just like it without thinking twice. She was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that builds up over 30 years of being the only black woman in rooms full of people who assumed she was there to take notes. She had a rolling carry-on, a leather tote on her shoulder, and a conference badge still clipped to her lapel from the cardiothoracic surgery symposium that had just wrapped up 3 blocks away. She hadn't bothered to take it off. She almost never did, those first few minutes after a long day of presenting. The Harrington Grand in downtown Charlotte was the kind of hotel that charged $400 a night and made you feel like you should be grateful for the privilege. Marble floors, a chandelier that was probably older than the state of North Carolina, staff in pressed navy uniforms who smiled at certain guests and looked through others. Evelyn rolled her bag toward the front desk. She didn't rush. She never rushed in lobbies anymore. She learned that rushing made people nervous in ways that stillness didn't, and she was too old and too tired to manage other people's discomfort on top of her own. There were 2 agents at the desk. One, a young white woman with a name tag that read Branagh, was finishing up with another guest. The other, a heavy-set man in his mid-40s named Dow Hitchens, according to his badge, glanced up at Evelyn, looked back at his computer screen, and then looked up again. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not dramatic, not even obvious to anyone watching from across the lobby, just a small recalibration. Evelyn had seen that look 10,000 times. She recognized it the way you recognize the sound of weather changing. She stepped up to the counter. "Good evening," she said. "Carter, I have a reservation." Dale's fingers moved to the keyboard without urgency. "Spell the last name for me." "Carter." He typed. Looked at the screen, typed again. "I'm not seeing anything under that name. Try Evelyn Carter, or it may be under Mercy General, my hospital books through a corporate account." More typing. A long pause that was slightly too long. "I'm still not finding it." Evelyn set her tote on the counter and unzipped the front pocket. She pulled out her phone, opened her email, and turned the screen toward him. Confirmation number, date, room type, the Harrington Grand's own logo at the top of the email. Everything. Dale looked at the screen, then at her, then back at the screen. "This confirmation is for 2 nights, checking in today." "That's correct." "I'm not sure how this happened," he said, and his voice had taken on a quality that Evelyn recognized. Slow, bureaucratic, the verbal equivalent of a door being quietly closed. "But we actually had a system migration this week, and some reservations didn't transfer correctly. Is my room available?" "We're looking into it." "That's not what I asked. I asked if the room is available." Brianna had finished with the other guest and was now hovering a few feet away, pretending to organize something. Dale clicked his mouse several times. "We do have availability, but I'd need to verify the payment method before I can. My hospital's corporate card is on file. You can see it in the confirmation email." "I understand that, ma'am, but our policy requires." "I've stayed at Harrington Properties 14 times in the past 4 years," Evelyn said. Her voice was even. She had spent decades developing that evenness. "I am a Harrington Premier. My number is in your system. My confirmation number is on my phone. I'm asking you to give me the room I reserved." Something hardened in Dale's face. Not anger exactly. More like a decision being made. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step to the side while I make a call to confirm." "I'm not going to step to the side." The lobby had gotten a little quieter. Not dramatically so. There was still the sound of the bar. Still a family checking in with Brianna now. Still the faint classical music piped through the speakers. But quieter in the specific way that happens when a few people nearby realize something is wrong and don't know whether to look or pretend they're not looking. "Ma'am, my name is Dr. Carter. I've told you that twice." Dale straightened. "I understand, but I have other guests to assist, and until I can verify." "Then verify. I'll wait right here." He stared at her for a moment. Then he picked up the phone behind the desk. Evelyn watched him. She didn't look away, and he knew she wasn't going to. Whatever he said into the receiver, he said quietly. When he hung up, he didn't look at her right away. We're going to need to ask you to wait in the seating area while our manager reviews the situation. Your manager can review it while I'm standing here. Our policy. You keep saying that word, Evelyn said. Policy. What policy, specifically, requires a guest with a confirmed reservation and a corporate account to stand in a waiting area while her room sits empty upstairs? Brianna had stopped pretending to organize things. A man in a darker navy blazer, management, obviously, came through a side door. His name tag said General Manager, Tord Presley. He was younger than Evelyn expected. Early 40s, sandy hair, a firm handshake posture even when he wasn't shaking anyone's hand. Is there a situation I can help with? He said it the way managers say it when they've already been briefed and have already decided whose side they're on. I have a confirmed reservation, Evelyn said. Your front desk agent is unable to locate it, despite the fact that I have the confirmation email on my phone. My corporate account is in your system, and I have stayed at Harrington Properties 14 times. Todd looked at Dale. Dale looked at the screen. There does appear to have been a systems issue, Todd said carefully. Then resolve the systems issue and give me my room. We'd like to do that, absolutely. But given the... He paused, chose his next words with the precision of someone who had taken a corporate training on conflict de-escalation. Given the irregularity of the booking, we have to follow our verification protocol before we can assign a room. What does that protocol involve exactly? A secondary form of identification and a physical credit card. Evelyn looked at him steadily. Do you ask that of every guest whose reservation experiences a systems issue, or is this protocol selectively applied? Todd's jaw tightened, just slightly. I assure you it's standard. I'd like to see that policy in writing. I don't have it printed. Then pull it up on your computer. I'll wait. She wasn't raising her voice. She had not raised her voice once. That was the thing people later had trouble understanding. How she could be so still. How she could stand at that counter, carry on beside her, conference badge still on her lapel, and simply wait, like she had all the time in the world, like she was not tired, like she had not just spent 3 days explaining the intricacies of minimally invasive mitral valve repair to a room full of surgeons. Todd was not going to pull up any policy, because there was no printed policy, because the policy was Dale Hutchins looking at a black woman with a rolling suitcase and deciding something about her without deciding it consciously, and Todd Presley backing him up, because that was easier than the alternative. Dr. Carter, Todd said, and something in his tone shifted. Quieter, more controlled, the practiced cadence of a man who was now trying to make a problem disappear rather than solve it. If you'd like, I can have our security team assist you to excuse me, to a seating area while you're going to have security escort me? It's simply I have a confirmed reservation at this hotel. I have shown you the confirmation. I have identified myself. I have not raised my voice. I have not made a scene. I have not done anything except asked for the room I reserved and paid for. And you are threatening to have me removed by security. The lobby was quiet now. Actually quiet. The family that had been checking in with Brianna had stopped talking. 2 men sitting in armchairs near the window had put their phones down. Todd lowered his voice. No one is threatening anything. We simply... I want you to hear yourself, Evelyn said, carefully, because I need you to understand what you are doing right now. She reached into her tote. She wasn't reaching for identification. She wasn't reaching for her Premier membership card. She was reaching for her phone, but not to show the confirmation email this time. She called a number from memory. Didn't look it up. 3 rings. Marcus, she said when someone picked up. I'm at the Harrington Grand in Charlotte. I need you to call Gerald Harrington's office in the morning. A pause. Yes. Tonight, if you can reach his assistant, tell him Dr. Down, Evelyn Carter, is standing in the lobby of his flagship property being told she needs a security escort because her confirmed reservation is, quote, irregular. Another pause. No, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stand here. She glanced at Todd. I imagine this will be resolved shortly. She ended the call and put her phone in her pocket. Todd Presley had gone very still. Because the thing about Evelyn Carter, the thing Dale Hutchins had not known when he looked at her and made his quiet recalibration, the thing Todd Presley had not known when he walked out of that side door, was that Evelyn was not just a cardiologist. She was chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Mercy General Hospital in Atlanta, a position she had held for 11 years. She sat on the board of the American College of Surgeons. She had testified before a Senate subcommittee on healthcare access in rural communities. She had, 7 months earlier, operated on Gerald Harrington's 71-year-old mother after a different surgical team said the procedure was too high risk. She had been in that operating room for 9 hours. Gerald Harrington had personally sent her a letter afterward. His assistant had his number flagged in her phone under Marcus. She didn't say any of this to Todd Presley. She didn't need to. There is a particular silence that falls over a room when someone realizes they have made a catastrophic miscalculation. It is different from other silences. It has weight. Todd Presley was standing in the middle of that weight right now, and he knew it, and everyone in the vicinity of the front desk could see that he knew it. "Dr. Carter," he said. His voice had changed completely. The management cadence was gone. He sounded like a man who was doing arithmetic very fast and not liking the answer. "I want to sincerely apologize for the confusion this evening." "I don't want an apology right now," Evelyn said. "I want my room." "Of course. Absolutely." He looked at Dale. Dale was already typing. "We're going to comp your stay for the inconvenience." "I didn't ask for that either." "I understand, but—" "I'd like my key, Mr. Presley. That's all I've wanted since I walked in." He nodded to Brianna, who moved to the desk and began processing the check-in with the speed and efficiency that had been entirely absent 5 minutes ago. Evelyn stood quietly while Brianna worked. She didn't look at Dale Hutchins. She didn't look at Todd Presley. She looked at the chandelier above the lobby, one of those enormous tiered things with hundreds of small lights, and she thought about what it cost to install something like that, and what it cost to maintain it, and how some things that look very solid and permanent can come apart faster than anyone expects when someone pulls the right thread. Brianna slid 2 key cards across the counter. "Room 1204, Dr. Carter, 11th floor. The elevator is just past the bar." "Thank you, Brianna." She picked up her tote. She took the key cards. She gripped the handle of her rolling bag. She did not look at Dale Hutchins on her way out. Some things don't deserve the acknowledgement. Todd Presley watched her go. He was already thinking about the call he was going to have to make in the morning. Maybe tonight. What he didn't know yet, what he would find out in approximately 16 hours, was that Marcus had not waited until morning. Marcus had reached Gerald Harrington's chief of staff at 9:47 in the evening. Gerald Harrington himself had seen the text summary by 10:15 while watching the news in his apartment in New York. He had made one phone call. One. The corporate office of the Harrington Hotel Group would launch a formal review of the Charlotte property within 48 hours. The review was announced internally as a routine audit. Nobody said Dr. Carter's name in the announcement. Nobody needed to. Dale Hutchins was placed on administrative leave, pending a complaint review 6 days later. The letter cited a pattern of conduct, not just one incident, but several others that had been documented by guests who had either not reported them or had reported them and been ignored. Todd Presley was not fired. Not immediately, but he was transferred. A smaller property in a secondary market, a step that everyone in hotel management understands is not a lateral move. And the Harrington Grand in Charlotte quietly revised its check-in protocol. New training materials were developed. An external equity consulting firm was brought in. The whole thing was handled with the smooth efficiency of an institution that has realized it has a problem and would very much prefer that the problem not become public. There is a version of the story where someone would say, justice was served. And in a narrow sense, that's true. The man who profiled a decorated surgeon was disciplined. The manager who backed him up was reassigned. Policies changed. But here is the thing nobody says out loud, the thing that lives in the quiet after the story ends. Evelyn Carter had done everything right. She had her confirmation email. She had her corporate account. She had 14 stays at Harrington Properties. She had her conference badge still on her lapel. She had credentials that most people spend entire careers trying to achieve, and still, she had to make a phone call to a billionaire's personal assistant before anyone in that lobby moved with urgency. The system had not protected her. Her status had, and those are not the same thing. She lay in room 1204 that night. The curtains open a crack. The Charlotte skyline doing what skylines do, glittering without awareness of anything beneath it. And she thought about all the women who looked like her who didn't have Marcus's number, who didn't have 11 years as chief of surgery, who didn't know Gerald Harrington's mother's name. What happened to them? She knew the answer. She had always known the answer. It sat in her chest the way certain things do, not as anger exactly, but as a kind of low, constant pressure. The pressure of knowing. She closed her eyes. In the morning, she had a 6 o'clock flight back to Atlanta. There was a patient waiting, a 63-year-old man from rural Georgia, first in his family to ever need open-heart surgery, scared in the particular way that people are scared when the system they've been told to trust is the one holding their life in its hands. She would be there. She was always there. That was the other thing nobody said out loud, that the people most let down by institutions are often the ones who keep those institutions running. The people who show up anyway, who do the work anyway, who walk into lobbies, knowing what might happen and walk through anyway. Carry on in hand, conference badge still on, tired in ways that don't show. Evelyn Carter set her alarm for 4:30 and fell asleep to the sound of the city outside, which did not stop for any of it, which never does. I keep thinking about the moment Evelyn didn't look at Dale Hutchins on her way to the elevator. Not because she was too angry to look, because she had already decided he wasn't worth it. And there's something in that, in the choice to keep walking, to not give the last word to someone who has already shown you exactly who they are, that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. What happened to Evelyn in that lobby wasn't unusual. That's the part that should sit uncomfortably with all of us. She had every credential, every confirmation, every right. And still she had to stand at that counter for 20 minutes, voice steady, while two men with far less than she had quietly decided she didn't belong. The injustice wasn't loud. It wasn't a scene. It was a series of small, deliberate frictions, a long pause, a redirected gaze, a word like policy used as a wall. What strikes me about Evelyn is that she never confused patience with weakness. She knew exactly what was happening. She named it clearly without flinching. I want you to hear yourself carefully. That sentence didn't come from anger. It came from something harder to build and easier to lose. A deep, settled sense of her own worth that no lobby, no manager, no systems issue could touch. That's not something you're born with. That's something you earn. Over 30 years of being the only one in the room, of doing the work anyway, of showing up for a 63-year-old man from rural Georgia at 6 in the morning when you've barely slept. The cause and the consequence in this story are as direct as anything I've ever seen. Dale made an assumption, Todd backed it up, and the ripple from those two decisions, a transfer, an administrative leave, a corporate review, revised training materials, didn't come from luck. It came from the fact that Evelyn had spent decades building something that couldn't be taken away at a front desk. Her reputation, her relationships, her record. The phone call to Marcus wasn't a trick. It was the natural result of 9 hours in an operating room fighting for a woman's life, of doing right by people even when the room was watching and even when it wasn't. I think about what it takes to be that kind of person. Not the phone call. The 30 years before the phone call. The integrity of showing up fully to work that most people will never see or credit. The intelligence to understand a system well enough to navigate it without losing yourself inside it. And the sheer endurance of walking into lobbies and operating rooms and Zenit hearing rooms, knowing what might happen and walking through anyway. Those things compound, quietly, slowly, the way anything real does. Evelyn set her alarm for 4:30 and went to sleep. She didn't celebrate. She didn't replay the lobby in her head. She had a patient in the morning. That's the whole story, really. The rest is just details.